now watching Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Davenport Auto Park, the ride of your life. And also sponsored by Flores Glass, serving the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Friends, and welcome to another episode of Wayback Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcock. So glad you could be with us tonight. Got a lot of ground to cover tonight. Got two, what I think are very interesting topics to discuss. And we're going to show you some pictures and talk about some things that you may not be aware of about your hometown here in Rocky Mount. Before we get into that, I want to take just a second and wish a very happy birthday to Lee, our control room tech. You know, week after week, I come and sit in front of you and talk about these old things, old buildings, old houses, old businesses, old people. But this show wouldn't take place without the efforts of Lee back in the control room. So Lee, thank you for all you do. And I want to wish you a happy birthday and many more happy birthdays. Okay. Tonight's show, as I said, we got two topics, both of which were given to me by you, the viewers. And I welcome this, by the way. Anytime you've got a topic you'd like to have me discuss on the show, feel free to give me a call either during the show, 407-1111 is the number, or after the show, you can call my cell phone, 883-1123. You can also email me. I'm easy to get in touch with. But I got a call after last week's show from Claudia Bowden. Her and her husband Don watch the show every week, and Claudia was telling me about a gentleman that I had never heard of that she remembered as a young girl here in Rocky Mount who used to live, he and his wife lived behind the Masonic Temple. And I thought, you know, that was interesting in and of itself, but from what I gathered, he was kind of like a caretaker, I guess. And my first thought was, we've all heard the stories of the people who lived inside the lighthouses down at the coast, for example. A lot of times it was an entire family, husband, wife, and the kids all lived inside the lighthouses. Well, this gentleman didn't live inside the Masonic Temple, but for many, many years, he was a caretaker for the Masonic Temple. His name was John Nordstrom, and we're going to talk about him and give you some history on Mr. Nordstrom. Led a fascinating life, he really did. And then we've got another topic that Sam Parham called me last week's show and said, you know, I think an interesting topic for your viewers might be the history of finance in Rocky Mount. And he went on to tell me that, you know, Rocky Mount at one time was literally the finance capital of eastern North Carolina. In fact, folks would come here from all over the eastern part of the state to get bank loans to build houses or develop a business. And Rocky Mount literally led the way in this part of the state as far as setting up hometown banks that would deal with you one-on-one to help with your financial needs. And when I got to digging into that topic this week, I was really fascinated not only by the number of banks that were started here in Rocky Mount, but how much they grew and how much of an impact they had on this, not only Rocky Mount, but this part of the state of North Carolina. So we'll talk about that. We've got a lot of information to share with on that. So without further ado, let's jump right into, you know, when I was researching John Nordstrom and the Masonic Temple, I ran across a couple of conflicting bits of information about the Masonic Temple itself. And before we go any further, Lee, go ahead if you would and put up picture number one, just for those that may be unfamiliar. This is the Masonic Temple. Of course, it's on Church Street, right next door to where the old Sears used to be on Church Street. To the left of this building used to be Chipley Lincoln Mercury. When I was in high school, I worked there for Mr. Flake Chipley. So when I was, even before that, when I was, 12 or 13 years old, Mr. and Mrs. Sorrell used to teach dance lessons in this building, and I took dance lessons there. Learned how to rumba and cha-cha and the waltz, and anyway, this is the Masonic Temple. But one of the conflicting things I saw a reference that said this building was built in 1927. And I also saw several instances where it was listed as being built around 1930. So it's possible construction may have started around 1927, but it looks like, from what I was able to gather, the building wasn't occupied as the Masonic Temple until sometime around 1930. So without further ado, Lee, if you would, and I've got a couple things that I pulled from city directors back in the day, just to kind of reinforce this idea about when this building became the Masonic Temple. And the interesting thing about the building itself was that it faced Church Street, of course, but there was a drive right beside it that went around behind the building, and there was a house back there. And it seems like I have a vague memory of that house. I wouldn't swear to that. I'm not sure when the house was torn down. But in any case, when Claudia told me about the house and Mr. and Mrs. Norton that lived behind the Masonic Temple, my first thought was that must have been a house on Franklin Street. She said, no, it was actually a Church Street address. So sure enough, when I got to looking, there was a house behind the Masonic Temple, and the address was 122 Northeast Church Street, North Church Street. So anyway, the house did have a Church Street address. It was directly located behind the Masonic Temple. But as I said, there was a couple things that made me kind of wonder about the exact time the building was built and the time that it became occupied as the Masonic Temple. So Lee, if you would go ahead and put up picture number 2. There you can see on your screen there, this was from the 1930 city directory. And as you see here, the Ancient and Free Accepted Masons, Corinthian Lodge, number 230, 139 Northeast Main Street. Now that was, in 1930, that was the address of the Masonic Temple in Rocky Mount. And of course, there were several, I guess you would call them lodges that met in that building. You see there Queen City Lodge, St. Bernard Commandery, Lydia Chapter 109, Rocky Mount Chapter, but they were all listed as 139 Northeast Main Street. So in 1930, in the city directory 1930, the address for the Masonic Temple was listed as 139 Northeast Main Street. Okay. Now, Lee, if you would, item number 3, picture number 3 is just a little blip out of the 1934 city directory. And 1934 shows the Masonic Temple as 122 North Church Street, and just below that you see the Masonic Temple building at 139 Northeast Main Street. So by 1934, the Masonic Temple itself had moved from 139 Northeast Main Street over to the 122 Church Street address. And of course, in some years later, the city actually bought the old Masonic Temple building on Main Street, and it became City Hall. Okay, so item number 4 then, Lee, if you would, is just one more reference from you see there, this was from the 1934 city directory, and it lists the address for the Masonic Temple as 122 Church Street. There you go. And also, you see John Norsham, the Free Will Baptist Church, and Alice Vick, who's a nurse. All of them were listed as 122 Church Street. Now, one of the things that Claudia told me when she called me was that Mr. and Ms. Norsham actually rented out rooms in their house. And so apparently the church rented out space inside the Masonic Temple, and this Alice Vick lady was a nurse and rented a room, I guess, inside the home of Mr. and Mrs. John Norsham. So anyway, interesting there. Before we move away from the Masonic Temple itself and get into more detail about Mr. Nordstrom, I'd like to, Lee, if you would, put up item number 5. And I mentioned that the city bought the old Masonic Temple building. This is the article that appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram, and it was kind of an op-ed piece, and I'll read it real quickly. It says, according to press reports, the city has recently purchased the old Masonic Opera House at the price of $25,000 from Mr. and Mrs. Marvin Robbins. We believe the city made a good purchase in buying this piece of property. It is well and centrally located, convenient for the city, and very accessible to the public. We further noticed that applications had been made by the Board of Aldermen for a loan of $65,000 to rework this building, and that this amount had been declined. We are not in favor of wasting money, and we do not believe that such an amount of $65,000 is needed to make repairs to this building. It is true that the floors of the Opera House will have to be torn out and leveled and a new floor and partitions put in, but any talk of spending $65,000 on this building looks extravagant. $10,000 to $15,000 would be a very liberal amount. It says the Masons once owned this building as a gift from the late R.H. Ricks of the Ricks Hotel fame, and it was sold by the Masons for $50,000, which was invested on Church Street in buying a lot and laying the foundation for the new Masonic Temple. This old Masonic Temple, when constructed, was the pride of Rocky Mount and the only building which the city had for public assemblies for many years. The building has splendid walls, and we will be delighted to see this building remodeled so that the city could move its city departments in it, but we cannot concur with the Board of Aldermen that $65,000 should be spent on it. So the city buys the old Masonic Temple building on North Church Street, turns it into the municipal building, if you will, and it was there for a number of years. And of course, eventually the new city hall was built. Okay, Lee, let's go ahead then to item number 6. And this was just another ad that I saw that I thought was interesting. And this is actually, there you go, you see the Wonder Event, Merchants and Manufacturers Exposition, next week, Mangum Warehouse. Down at the very bottom it says, proceeds to Masonic Temple Building Fund. Now, interestingly enough, this ad appeared in March of 1935 in the Rocky Mount Telegram. So I'm not sure, unless they were trying to raise money to rehab the old Masonic Temple building on Main Street, and that may have been what this was all about. I just thought it was interesting that this was a big ad that appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram in March of 1935. And you see it says a colossal showing of $250,000 in displays by Rocky Mount's leading merchants, auto dealers, and manufacturers. 7 feature circus acts. There's style shows, auto show, quilt show, industrial show, dancing, food show, a miniature World's Fair. Buy a season ticket. It was giving away $250 in cash prizes, something different every night, and again, proceed to the Masonic Temple Building Fund. So there was no more, I couldn't find anything else about that event, so I can only assume that the money was being raised to rehab the old Masonic Temple building, but I couldn't quote that for sure. Okay, Mr. Nordstrom. This gentleman led a fascinating life, and I'm going to just read a little bit of information I compiled while I was doing Ritual Healing. Then we'll get into some more articles and pictures from the Telegram. He was born in 1867 in a little town called Nyland, N-Y-L-A-N, Sweden. By the time he was 17, he got a job on a lumber ship and began his sailing career. He applied for and was accepted into the Swedish Navigation School and graduated as a mate. Wanting to learn and speak English, he bought his own ticket aboard a ship to England. In England, he met another Swede, and the two decided to work their way across the country in hopes of eventually learning the language well enough to get a job sailing on an English ship. He eventually sailed under the flag of Great Britain on a 4-masted schooner sailing to Australia. Several years went by before he finally landed on the ship that would eventually bring him to America. Landing in New York City, he had $30 in cash and his sea bag of personal possessions. He would later sail out of Philadelphia to faraway ports of Peru, Rio de Janeiro, and many others. Arriving back in the U.S., he finally settled in Norfolk, Virginia, and went to work for the Norfolk and Southern Railroad. He became a railroad carpenter, and this would eventually become his primary trade. Hearing that the ACL Railroad was offering excellent opportunities, he applied for and was accepted as a carpenter. He was assigned to the ACL Railroad in Rocky Mount in 1907 and came to work here as a railroad carpenter. He worked for the railroad until 1930 when the local Masonic Temple was constructed, and he then retired from the railroad and became the caretaker for the temple. He had become a Mason during his time in Norfolk, so this was a perfect fit for him. So a little history there on Mr. Nordstrom and his early life. And again, this reference here that he came to work for the railroad until 1930 when the local Masonic Temple was constructed. That's a direct line from one of the articles I found. So again, there's a bit of a conflict about when the Masonic Temple was actually built. It may have been started in 27, but I believe it was 1930 or thereabouts before it was actually in use by the Masons. Okay, Lee, item number 7. This is an article that appeared in February of 1937, and it says, Mr. Nordstrom celebrates anniversary with party. Mr. John Nordstrom, custodian of the Masonic Temple since it was built about 7 years ago, celebrated his birthday in a big way on Wednesday. Although he had rounded out his allotted 70 years and 10, Mr. Norton says it was just 70 years young, that he is just 70 years young, and he felt in the mood for a real birthday party. So he issued an open invitation to his friends to attend. This they did. More than 100 presented themselves at 8 o'clock and remaining to join in the fun until close to the midnight hour. So Mr. Nordstrom wanted to have a birthday party for his 70th birthday. He made an open invitation to the public. Over 100 people showed up. And get this now, it was obviously, he had a lot of friends, that goes without saying. So the program was opened with a beautifully executed drill staged by 20 members of the Order of the Rainbow for Girls, of which Mrs. Weisner, its two-mother advisor, and Ms. Mary Lee Daltrich is worthy advisor. Then followed vocal selections by Mr. Hughes, who was accompanied by Miss Bessie Darton, trombone selections by Mr. Claude Mayo. Who knew Claude Mayo could play the trombone? And Miss Gemma Mayo at the piano. So this was a big deal. Mr. Nordstrom had a lot of guests, a lot of friends, and this was just one of many birthday parties he had. I saw several articles about his parties over the years, but this was his 70th birthday party and took place at the Masonic Temple in 1937. Okay, Lee, let's go to item number 8. As I said, Mr. Nordstrom started out his career as a sailing man and literally sailed around the world under the flags of 3 different countries, I should say. But in 1937, he was eager to go back home and visit some of his relatives. So he had a bon voyage party, going away party, if you will. And this was a picture that appeared of Mr. Nordstrom in the Rocky Mount Telegram, August of 1937. And it said more than 200 guests attend the party on the eve of his departure from Sweden. It says many of the members of the Masons and the Railway Fraternal Orders were present for the bon voyage party given by Mr. John Nordstrom at the Masonic Temple on Monday evening. Uncle John, or Mate as the host is known to his friends, left this morning for New York and will sail that port on board the Manhattan for his native home in Stockholm, Sweden. And it's a long article. I'm not going to try to read the whole thing, but it does go on to talk about his history, working for the railroad and coming to Rocky Mount and becoming a carpenter with the railroad. But he had a long, illustrious career with the railroad and then retired from there. And like I say, the last several years of his life were spent as a caretaker for the Masonic Temple. And it was just neat that they chose him to do that. He was a Mason himself. And keep in mind that this article appeared in the paper in August of 1937. Had a big party, going away party, when he left to go back to Sweden to visit family back in his home country. Okay, Lee, item number 9. In October of 1937, he came back from Sweden. And this article appeared in the Telegram in October 1937. It says, Mr. Nordstrom returns from visit to Sweden. He arrived in the city on Monday afternoon after having spent the past 2 months in his native country of Sweden. Uncle John, as he is known to hundreds of friends here, made the voyage on board the SS President Roosevelt and docked in New York on Saturday. He was met upon his arrival by Mrs. Nordstrom, and they made a brief visit to Mr. Nordstrom's daughter in Richmond after a short stay in the metropolis. Doesn't say how long it took him to get from New York back to Rocky Mount, but in 1937, it's a good bet he rode in on a train. So probably a couple days, but in any case, big to do when he left and a big to do when he came back. Okay, I mentioned there were several parties over the years from Mr. Nordstrom. Certainly his 80th birthday was a big event. His 70th birthday was a big event. And when he turned 80, he had another birthday party at the Masonic Temple. So Lee, item number 10, if you would. And this is the article of the period. It says, John Nordstrom celebrated his 80th birthday with a party at the Masonic Temple on Thursday night. Over 200 invited guests attended the affair. The temple was decorated for the occasion with a variety of early spring flowers and evergreens. The buffet was covered with an embroidered white tablecloth, and the punch bowl was banked with evergreens. Members of the Eastern Star arranged the punch table and served punch and assorted nuts and cake. High school band, under direction of J. Claude Mayo, played several selections. M.L. Baker was master of ceremonies. He paid tribute to Mr. Nordstrom and stated that the occasion was a memorable one, as it was the pleasure of only a very few to be able to celebrate an 80th birthday in this life. Lee Gravely paid tribute to Uncle John for his long and faithful service to the Masonic Temple. And at the end of the program, Reverend Norman Johnson gave the benediction. So this was obviously a well-liked, well-respected gentleman. and a lot of friends in Rocky Mount, and certainly a lot of friends in the railroad, a lot of friends with the Masonic Temple. Item number 11, Lee, was a feature story that appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram in March of 1953. And it's a long article. It's more than 2 pages in length. I'm not going to attempt to read it, but it was just a really neat story. What I read earlier, this was all covered in this article here about his early sailing days as a young man sailing around the world, then coming to the United States, going to work for the railroad. But when this article appeared, he was already up in age, and as you can see there, he looks to be still in relatively good health to be as old as he was. But he was just a well-respected individual, and much love for this gentleman by a lot of people. And I just realized it's time for our first commercial break. So Lee, bring it back to me. Folks, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I've got a few more things to show you and share with you about Mr. Nordstrom. And then we're going to talk about some financial issues and how Rocky Mount was a big financial capital for many, many years here for eastern part of the state. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
And we're back. Folks, we just tuned in. We're talking tonight a little bit about Mr. John Nordstrom, who led a fascinating life. I had never heard of the man until Claudia Bowden called me last week after last week's show and said she remembered him as a child, when she was a child, and she thought it would be an interesting topic to take a look at. And so I began doing some digging, and indeed it was a fascinating topic. This gentleman led a fascinating life. It's a kind of a life that you see movies made about. Sailing as a young man around the world on 3-masted, 4-masted schooners, and working on the railroad and traveling with the railroad, doing carpenter work and so forth. Literally, I mean, just on the go. He lived to be 90 years old, and even up into his late 80s, he was still very active with the Masonic Temple. In August of 1954, he was bedridden, and I think perhaps they may have thought he was about to pass away. And so coincidentally, he had been a Mason for 50 years by this time. And so there was a big celebration at the temple, and they presented him. It looks like they went to either his home or maybe even a hospital bed to present this. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Lee, item, if you would, item number 12, put it on the screen for our viewers. But this article appeared in the Evening Telegram on Friday, August 27th, 1954, and is the occasion where Mr. John Nordstrom was awarded his 50-year Masonic pin. And it's a little short article. I'll just read it right quick here for you. It says, one of the great ambitions of his life was realized last night when John Nordstrom, retired railroad man and longtime tiller and sentinel for the local Masonic Temple, received a 50-year Masonic pin. A sizable gathering of fellow Masons and friends gathered at the Nordstrom home at 122 North Church Street. Notice that address, 122 North Church, the same address as the Masonic Temple. It said, was followed by a refreshment session. On hand to do the honors was fellow holder of a 50-year pin, Dr. J.W. Kinchelow, pastor emeritus of the First Baptist Church. I do believe Dr. Kincheloe has had a bust made of him by Frank Thigpen, who made many other busts of Rocky Mount citizens, including Spiro Canouclas and Josh Horn. But anyway, it said Mr. Norton has been in poor health for quite some time. Also on hand for the occasion was Dr. Norman Johnson, pastor of the First Presbyterian Church, of which Mr. Norton was a member. But anyway, this was in 1954. At this time, he was 87 years old. And again, it says he lived at 122 North Church Street, just behind the Masonic Temple. So, August 54, it appeared he was on his last. He was certainly sickly. He got presented this 50-year pin, but this gentleman wasn't through. Item number 13, Lee, if you would. In February of 1957, on his 90th birthday, Mr. John Norton decided it was time for one more party. So it said John Norton celebrated his 90th birthday and his 50th anniversary as a Rocky Mount citizen here recently. Best known for his long service as tiller at the Masonic Temple, Mr. Norton was first connected with the Atlantic Coastline Railroad when he came to Rocky Mount. A native of Sweden, he went to sea at age 17 and came to the U.S. via Australia. He and his wife live at 122 North Church Street. And as you can see there, he's in just 3 short years, from August of 54 to February of 57, he got up from the bed, apparently was still pretty good health, but sadly this would be the last occasion of any partying or gatherings from Mr. Norton. This article appeared in February of 1957. By August of 1957, Lee, if you would, pick up item number 14. By August, Mr. Norton, as you see the headline there, was taken by death. And it says, John Norton, longtime resident of Rocky Mount, died early this morning of a lengthy illness. He was 90. Born January 30th, 1867 in Nyland, Sweden, he had lived in Rocky Mount since 1907. He made his home at 122 North Church Street. He was a retired machinist for the ACO Railroad and a member of the First Presbyterian Church, a Shriner and a Mason for 52 years. Mr. Norton was also a member of the Eastern Star for 25 years. Surviving are his wife, Nora Hudson Norton of the home, 1 daughter, 2 grandsons, and other relatives living in Sweden. So, sadly, his 90th birthday took place in February of 57, but by August of 1957, he had passed away. And one more quick note on Mr. Norton. August of 57, he passed away, and Lee, item number 15, if you would. By September of 57, his wife, I guess, decided it was time to clean house. And so this little blip appeared, ad, it says, for sale, household furnishings, heaters, Mrs. John Norton, behind Masonic Temple. So he died in August, and in September she was cleaning house. So sorry about that, Mr. Norton. All right, I mentioned at the top of the show that I'd gotten a call from Sam Parham, and Sam said, you know, Rocky Mount has really a neat history in the financial business. Several hometown banks were started here, and Rocky Mount really was, and I didn't realize the extent to which Rocky Mount was a financial capital until I started doing the research for the night show. And so I didn't know exactly how far to go back. I said, well, let me just go back as far as I can go. You've heard me say on the show before, I have digital copies of Rocky Mount City Directories going all the way back to 1908. I don't have every year from there coming forward, but the oldest one I have is from 1908. So I went to the 1908 City Directory, and lo and behold, here's what I found starting off. So Lee, if you would, put up item number 16. This was an ad that appeared in the Rocky Mount City Directory in 1908, and you see the Bank of Rocky Mount, capital stock 100,000, profits 42,000, and the officers: Thomas H. Battle, President; R.H. Ricks, Vice President; L.F. Tillery, Cashier; E. Batcher, Assistant Cashier; and L.V. Bassett, Attorney. Accounts of merchants, manufacturers, individuals, and all business people solicited. So, you know, this wasn't the first bank in Rocky Mount. People's Bank, Planters Bank, both were started before this. But this was the first ad I could find where there was a Bank of Rocky Mount. And, you know, as time went on, Rocky Mount businessmen, namely people like Mr. Robert Henry Ricks and many others, Tom Hyman Battle, got together and pooled their resources and started several financial institutions. I saw the same names over and over and over again when I was going through my research for the night show. Lee, item number 17, if you would. This appeared in April of 19. Oh, I'm sorry, it was the same. I think I misspoke earlier. These ads did not appear in the City Directory. They appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram, which I'm still misspeaking. In 1908, it wasn't the Telegram. I think it was the Rocky Mountain Herald back then. But in any case, these were two ads. Both appeared in April of 1908. It says you can draw money from this bank anytime you need it, but you'll think twice before you decide that you do need it. Every dollar you deposit is earning money for you at the savings bank, Rocky Mount Savings and Trust. You see at the bottom there, Thomas B. Battle, J.C. Brazel, F.P. Sproul. So again, these local businessmen were pooling their resources and putting these banks and savings and loans together. And you know, in later years, it became much more advantageous for these local real estate agents and building contractors and insurance companies to have their own banks. Made it easier to get loans and financing to build houses, to build businesses, and certainly to fund and make funds available for insurance purposes. So, okay, now this one I did pull from the City Directory in 1908. I knew I had one from the City Directory. Item number 18, if you would, Lee. And this is another ad appeared, the Rocky Mount Homestead and Loan Association, the old reliable. You see there, it says new series open every 6 months. Call at the office of Rocky Mount Insurance and Realty Company next door to the Bank of Rocky Mount. And there you see Thomas H. Battle, President, R.L. Huffin, Secretary and Treasurer. So again, we see these same names popping up over and over and over again. These individuals that are involved with banks and savings and loans and several different organizations. But this is back in 1908. Rocky Mount was already building a reputation as being a financial center. Item number 19, if we could, Lee. This is actually the front cover of the 1915 City Directory. And if you'll notice at the top of the screen there, I know it's a little hard to see, but it says Bank of Rocky Mount, more than $500,000, commercial and savings deposits solicited. Then at the bottom it says Rocky Mount Insurance and Realty Company, capital in surplus, $125,000. And again, you see the names, Thomas H. Battle, W.T. Fuller, R.L. Huffins, F.E. Winslow. So these gentlemen were constantly being involved in putting together these banks and these savings and loans and these insurance companies. And it was all tied together, and it all worked well. Item number 20, Lee, May 1935, First Federal Savings and Loan. You see there it says direct deductions mortgage loans, $10 per $1,000 plan. The loan runs for 139 months, fully paid at the end of that period. So First Federal, this is, by the way, located at 201 Tarboro Street. Just another local bank that went into business to help people get off the ground with their building of homes and financing mortgages and these kind of things. Very important for a community to have access to this kind of capital to build homes and build businesses. And without these banks, a lot of the growth that took place in the Rocky Mountain in the early 30s, 40s, and 50s could not have happened. Item number 21, if you would, Lee, Builders Federal Savings and Loan. This ad appeared August 21st, 1936. And then at the bottom, you see the officers down there. C.C. Ward, President, S.E. Ballantyne, Vice President, W.M. Spears, Vice President, A.J. Dowdy, Secretary Treasurer, and then the Board of Directors, S.E. Ballantyne, D.O. Bullock, Z.B. Bullock, A.L. Daughtridge, J.E. Davenport, I.J. Dowdy Jr., H.A. Easley, W.M. Spears, E.C. Spate, C.C. Ward, and J.D. Winstead. So again, prominent businessmen, successful businessmen who knew how to put a business together and keep it afloat, pooling their resources and putting these banks and savings and loans in place to help Rocky Mount grow. And grow it did. Item number 22, Lee, just another ad that appeared in the Telegram January 1937. And this was actually a collective ad. I know it's kind of hard to see on your screen, but in this one ad, there is Builders Federal has a listing, Builders Federal Savings and Loan, Twin County Rental Company, Real Estate, City Industrial Banking, the City Industrial Bank. All of these ads were co-opted because they were all kind of, in many cases, some of the same board members were on different banks, and so they were all worked together to provide financing for different types of loans and so forth. It was a neat collection of people with a like-minded effort and ideas about how to grow Rocky Mount, and certainly financial capital was a critically important part of that growth. Item number 23, Lee, 1944, October 1944, loans on automobiles made promptly at the City Industrial Bank. Again, C.C. Ward, President, W.M. Spears, Vice President. If you wish to borrow money on your present car or wish to buy a car and pay cash for it, we shall be glad to assist you with an automobile loan. Prompt service, no long waiting. Come in and talk it over with our officer. Again, October 1944. Okay. City Industrial Bank in 1944 was located at 142 South Church Street. Lee, item number 24. This building stands today. This is the address, in the location, I should say, where the City Industrial Bank building was in 1944 on Main Street in Rocky Mount. 142 South Main Street, to be exact. Okay. Item number 25, Lee. January 1939, New Home Building and Loan Association. T.W. Coleman, President. H.H. Strandberg, Secretary Treasurer. Mr. Strandberg, of course, instrumental in getting Standard Interest and Realty off the ground. I'm not sure, but I think Tom Coleman was also involved with Nash Brick Company. I know there was a Mr. Coleman involved in that company. I think that may have been the same gentleman. But you see there, this again, these local businessmen who had the know-how to run a business and had the financial resources to pool with other local businessmen to put these banks and savings and loans together, and they were without a doubt very instrumental in helping Rocky Mount grow during the 30s, 40s, 50s. Item number 26, Lee, this article, or ad I should say, appeared in 1948, August 48, in the Rocky Mount Telegram. It says, the last day, your investment made today will receive dividends as of August 1st. And again, it's another one of these co-op ads. Builders Federal Loan and Federal Savings and Loan, Home Savings and Loan, Citizens Savings and Loan, First Federal Savings and Loan. These were all local banks that were all doing well. I mean, that's the thing. I don't know that any of them were struggling. The country had just gone through a war effort, of course. World War II had been over only a few years by this point. Soldiers coming back from the war, wanting to buy new cars, wanting to build new houses. It took money to do that. And so these local banks and savings and loan companies, together with the gentlemen that we have mentioned already, were able to help these soldiers coming back from the war build these homes, and many of them started businesses. I just realized it's time for our next commercial break, so Lee, bring it back to me. When we come back, folks, we've got some more pictures to show you. We'll talk a little bit more about how Rocky Mount was able to grow and prosper because of the efforts of so many of these gentlemen who helped put these banks and these savings and loans together and really helped put Rocky Mount on the map. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
And we're back. Folks, we're just tuning in. We're talking about Rocky Mount being a financial capital of Eastern North Carolina. You know, it seems strange to say that now. You would think that, you know, if you talk about financial capital, certainly you would think Raleigh, today anyway. But Rocky Mount in its past was indeed a financial capital for Eastern North Carolina. Mostly thanks to the efforts of people like Robert Henry Ricks and some of the other men we mentioned earlier, Hyman Battle and so forth. These gentlemen who were already successful in business and realized that businesses needed capital to operate, needed capital to get started. People needed money to build homes and buy cars. And so, you know, it was a natural fit for a lot of these real estate developers, for example, to get into the banking industry, and these insurance companies to get into the banking industry. So there were several different local banks and savings and loans companies that shared board of directors, if you will. The same gentleman appeared on boards of different banks and different organizations. Where we leave off at 26. Let's go to 27 if we could. This ad appeared in 1948. What is your outlook for your future? What is the outlook for your future? Does it hold real promise of peace of mind and security? If not, now is the time to begin building your insured savings account at Citizens Savings and Loan Association. You will find it pleasant as well as profitable to save here. Our people are helpful and cooperative. Your savings are insured up to $5,000 by the Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation. Notice that Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation. You know, I don't know that there's the same emphasis on saving now as it was in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And frankly, that's kind of a shame because so many people struggle, you know, week in, week out, month in, month out, year to year, and don't feel like they have any money to put into a savings account. But it's always been important, and it seems that in years past there was more focus on the importance of saving for the future. I sometimes think we don't teach our young people enough about the importance of putting money aside for a rainy day, to use an old saying. But anyway, 1958, let's fast forward. That was from 1948 there. In 1958, these local Rocky Mount savings and loans companies and banks were really exploding in growth. In June of 1958, Builders Federal moved into a brand new building on Church Street. This is almost right across the street from the old Sears building, if you know where that is, and the Masonic Temple, right across from over there. And I found several articles and really a lot of history was written about Builders Federal and the people who worked there and started that company when they made this move in June of 1958. So, okay, this was the building itself that he moved into in June of 58. Lee, item number 29. This article, and I'm not going to try to read this whole thing. I'll just read a little piece of it here. I mentioned a gentleman earlier, Mr. Marshall Spears. It says, William Marshall Spears has been in banking since he was 15 years old. At that early age, he went to work with the Farmers and Merchants Bank, where he was employed for 7 years. The experience he gained at that job, along with his employment later at the First Banking Trust Company, led him to help found the City Industrial Bank of Rocky Mount in 1928, and now serves as Executive Vice President. In addition, Spears has many other banking interests. He is a Director and Vice President of Builders Federal Savings and Loan, Vice President of Twin County Rental Company, President of the Carolina Building Supply Company, President of Spears and Dowdy, a partner in Heck and Spears Developers of Westridge. He holds directorships in City Industrial Bank, Twin County Rental Company, Carolina Building Supply, the Chamber of Commerce in Rocky Mount, Wesleyan College Foundation. So, I mean, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Mr. Spears is one of these gentlemen who was involved in several different institutions in banking and savings and loans companies. And of course, you see he was very much involved in the building industry. So it made sense for these builders and real estate developers to have a bank that they could go to and finance their projects into houses and businesses they were selling. Okay, item number 30, Lee. This is just a congratulatory ad that appeared. It says, congratulations, Builders Federal Savings and Loan Association, on your new home. And this, of course, is from the City Industrial Bank. This ad appeared at the same time, June 1958, when Builders Federal moved into their new location on Church Street. It says, we have been tenants in the same building for many years. Your new building is a fine addition to the growth and progress of the business section of Rocky Mount. We are proud of your new building and extend our best wishes for your continued success and growth, which we are sure you'll experience in your new building. City Industrial Bank, their slogan was the Savings Bank. How about that? All right, item number 31, Lee. Again, June 58. This is all these are talking about. Builders Federal moving into a new building. And this article talks about Mr. Charles Heck of Rocky Mount. And he was one of the directors of the Builders Federal Savings and Loan Association. Prior to moving here in 1945, he was chief industrial engineer and works manager of the Platt LePage Aircraft Corporation in Philadelphia. From 42 to 44, he was an industrial engineer for the Consolidated Vultee Aircraft Corporation of Elizabeth City and San Diego, California. Prior to that, he worked for Fairchild Aircraft in Hagerstown, Maryland. Anyway, in Rocky Mount, he holds a directorship of City Industrial Bank. In addition to his directorship with the Builders Federal Savings and Loan, he is also a member of the Civitan Club. And anyway, I'm not certain, maybe someone will know about this. I believe this is the same Charlie Heck that had the car business out on 301 too. I'm not positive, maybe someone who remembers him can confirm that, but I think that was the same gentleman that had that out on there, Peddler's Village, I think is where it was located at. Item number 32, Lee. This is just a little article that appeared in 1958 about Builders Federal. I'm not going to read it all, but real briefly it says, when 34th anniversary of Builders Federal and Loan of Rocky Mount arrived on February 22nd, this year more went on into the future of the business than the outstanding past accomplishments. And it goes on to talk about how long it's been in business. Talks about it says in 1942 the Builders Federal Savings and Loan Association, in order to better serve its rapidly growing number of customers, moved from 132 South Main to its present headquarters in the city, Industrial Bank building. But in 1957, the Association of Resources reached a point more than 4 times those of 45. So the next move was a matter of time. It talks about the growth of Builders Federal from the early 1940s up through the late 1950s, when they were literally forced to move into a new building because they outgrew their space in the old building. Item number 33, Lee, talks about another gentleman that we have already mentioned, Mr. C.C. Ward. C.C. Ward, president of Builders Federal Savings and Loan Association, has been prominently identified in insurance, banking, real estate, and building and loan circles for the past 40 years. Man had a very impressive resume. I'm not going to read through all these accreditations and fellowships and boardships and so forth, but it gets out of what I was saying earlier. These were very successful local business people who had been in and around business and industry for a number of years, and they literally helped put Rocky Mount on the map as being a financial institution and a place you could go borrow money to build a home, to start a business, to buy a car, to fund a college education. It was just a lot of good was done by these individuals over the years, and it's a shame that there's not more focus put into it today. Item number 34, Lee, if you would. This is an article, or an ad, that appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram in September 1970. And you see there at upper left-hand corner, it says, my family just bought a 3-bedroom dream house in Berkshire with a $275 down payment. Can you imagine buying a new house with a $275 down payment? And this ad, of course, was a Builders Federal Savings and Loan Association ad, but it was highlighting 2 different residential sections, Berkshire at the top, Ravenwood at the bottom, and they were encouraging people who wanted to buy a new home to come in and get their mortgage through Builders Federal Savings and Loan Association. And so they were obviously very successful at that. January 1975, item number 35, if you would, Lee. Marshall Spears, recently retired chairman of the board of directors, the Federal Builders Federal Savings and Loan, was honored Thursday with a dinner at a local steakhouse. He and Charles W. Heck on the left, new board chairman, are shown with the plaque presented on behalf of the NC Savings and Loan League. And it just talks about Mr. Spears retiring, and he was honored here at this meeting and presented with this plaque. But he was just one of many, as I said earlier. You see these same names popping up over and over again involved in these various savings and loan and banking institutions that without a doubt Rocky Mount could not have progressed and experienced the growth that it did without the efforts of these gentlemen, and particularly these institutions, these savings and loans and these banking institutions that they themselves started. Item number 36, Lee, was an article or ad that appeared in the paper September 1976. Again, Builders Federal Savings. And it says, ever tried to figure out how much savings and interest you could have in 15 years? I seem to recall seeing these things. It's a little handheld calculator kind of thing that you could twist and turn, and it would give you an opportunity to line up a dollar amount of investing with $20 a month, $40 a month, whatever, and then the interest rate, and it would tell you over a period of time how much money you would accumulate if you stuck with that process. I'd love to run across one of these things. I seem to recall seeing these. Somewhere in the folds of my memory, I seem to recall it being about something you'd hold in your hand. But it's a neat little idea. I've not seen one since, and I don't know there's even any more in existence. But it was a good little thing to pass out to customers to instill in them the importance and the benefit of investing and saving your money. Okay. Item number 37, Lee. Barbara Cobb offers all her customers two things: good financial advice and a cup of coffee. It says when you come to Barbara Cobb for financial advice, the first thing she will probably recommend is a cup of coffee. Then it's a matter of sitting down at her office, talking one-on-one, and deciding on the right financial approach to suit your individual needs. Barbara and everyone else at Builders Federal Savings and Loan gives you that much attention. It's what we call bigger attention. If you're looking for financial planning that's tailored to your objectives, come see us at Builders Federal Savings and Loan. The coffee pot is on. This appeared, as I said, November 1987. It was just another ad for Builders Federal Savings and Loan, and obviously they were very successful. In 1990, March of 1990, pick number 38 if you would, Lee, this article appeared, and it talks about Citizen Savings cites successful year. It says Citizen Savings is enjoying considerable success as Henry Hicks, chairman of the board and chief executive officer. All our markets are continuing to be very strong, Hicks said. We have seen a continuing strong market in terms of single-family mortgages. We've enjoyed considerable success in the last few months in terms of consumer lending. We are pleased with the retail banking aspects of our business. Citizen Savings and Loan became Citizen Savings Bank on September 11, 1989. The name change to a savings bank more aptly describes the operations of the bank and affords it greater public awareness of the varied products and services offered by the bank. Citizens Bank is located at 230 Sunset Avenue. Principal officers are Henry Hicks, chairman of the board, R.C. Anderson, executive vice president, William Edwards, senior vice president, G. Willard Barnes, vice president, and Irma Griner Ritter, vice president. I draw your attention to the bottom right-hand corner of your screen there. Merger pleases Raleigh Federal. Raleigh Federal Bank, 300 North Gray Street, is pleased to have merged with Builders Federal Savings and Loan in November 1989. A bank spokesman said, "We look forward to serving the Rocky Mount community." Jack Harris is area manager for Raleigh Federal Bank. Gail Holmes is office manager, and Merrill Kennedy is a mortgage account executive. Marin Kennedy. How about that? I knew him. I guess he's still around. Hadn't seen his name or thought about him in many years, but I do remember Marin Kennedy. But anyway, we talked about Builders Federal there for several minutes and what they had done in the Compton Rocky Mount. And in March of 1990, Builders Federal Savings and Loan merged with Raleigh Federal Bank. How about that? And lastly, Item number 39, Lee. This is an article that appeared March of 1994 in the Rocky Mount Telegram. Local banks see growing changes. For area banks, 1993 was a year of changing, merging, and growing. For Citizens Savings Bank and Pioneer Bank, 1993 was a year of merger. The Mount Olive-based Southern Bank emerged from Citizens Savings in July 1993. Southern took over operations of Citizens Savings Office in Rocky Mount and National Roanoke Rapids. Southern Bank experienced a 30% growth in 1993 as a result of acquiring Citizens Savings. The bank's goals for 1994 are to meet the financial needs of people and businesses in the communities we serve by combining modern banking products with hometown service. First Citizens Bank, a Raleigh-based bank, took over operations of Pioneer Bank. First Citizens had a Church Street location and a Spring Hope office. With the acquisition of Pioneer, it now has a Franklin Street office and branches on Sunset and Country Club Road. Centura Bank, the result of a merger between Peoples and Planters Banks, experienced an increase over 30% from 92. The bank is the state's 7th largest and among the 100 largest banks in the nation. You know, when I read this earlier, I couldn't help but be somewhat saddened that the hometown bank is no more. You know, you're lucky now if you know anybody in the bank. You're lucky if anybody in the bank knows who you are. And it's really sad that we don't really have hometown banks anymore. We were fortunate to have the ones we did over the years, and it's a shame so many have gone by the wayside. Folks, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a great week. Take care of yourselves and be kind to one another. We'll see you next week and more Wayback Wednesday. Good night.